A navy without ships just defeated one of the world's most powerful fleets. No destroyers, no frigates, no submarines. Yet by 2024, Ukraine had destroyed or disabled approximately 1/3 of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, forcing the survivors to flee hundreds of miles from their home ports. The British Ministry of Defense declared Russia's naval force functionally inactive. This isn't speculation. This is verified military intelligence that's rewriting every naval warfare doctrine on the planet. How did Ukraine accomplish what military strategists called impossible? The answer involves garage-built drones, Starlink satellites, and tactical brilliance that turned Russia's blockade into its own naval graveyard. I'm Sophie Hart, and you're watching Sophie Hart Reports. If you want to understand how modern warfare is being completely transformed before our eyes, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next in this conflict. Let's break down the most dramatic David versus Goliath naval story in modern history, and why every military academy will be teaching these tactics for decades to come. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, the naval balance seemed absolutely hopeless for Ukraine. Russia's Black Sea Fleet boasted over 70 combat vessels, including the flagship cruiser Moskva, multiple frigates, corvettes, landing ships, and submarines. This was a force that had operated in the region for centuries. Ukraine, by contrast, had virtually no navy. The country had lost most of its fleet when Russia seized Crimea in 2014. Ukraine's only major warship, the frigate Hetman Sahaidachny, was deliberately scuttled in the first days of the war to prevent Russian capture. On paper, this wasn't a contest. It was a massacre waiting to happen. Russia immediately imposed the naval blockade on Ukrainian ports, strangling the country's maritime exports. Ukraine is one of the world's largest grain exporters, and these shipments represented billions of dollars in annual revenue, money desperately needed to fund Ukraine's defense. By the spring of 2022, Ukrainian grain exports had collapsed. Ships sat trapped in port. Global food prices spiked. Russia's strategy was brutally simple: economically strangle Ukraine while ground forces advanced from the east. Without export revenue, Ukraine would run out of money to buy weapons and ammunition. Then came April 14, 2022. In what would become a turning point for the entire war, Ukraine struck back in a way nobody expected. Using domestically produced Neptune anti-ship missiles, Ukrainian forces targeted and sank the Moskva, the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Let that sink in for a moment. The Moskva was a Slava-class guided missile cruiser worth approximately $750 million, carrying a crew of 500 sailors. It was the most powerful ship in the Black Sea and Russia's primary air defense platform for the entire region. This was the first enemy flagship sunk in combat since the Russo-Japanese War of 1904. For Russia, it was a humiliation on a scale difficult to overstate. For Ukraine, it proved something crucial. Russian naval power was not invincible. The Moskva had been providing air cover for other Russian ships and had played a key role in capturing Snake Island at the war's start. Now it rested on the seafloor, and with it went Russia's ability to defend its naval formations from air attack. But Ukraine wasn't done. What came next would fundamentally change naval warfare forever. Unable to build a traditional navy, Ukraine developed something entirely new: unmanned naval drones packed with explosives and guided by operators hundreds of miles away. Two main drone families emerged. The Defense Intelligence of Ukraine develops the Magura V5, while the Security Service of Ukraine created the Sea Baby. These weren't crude, remote-controlled boats. They were sophisticated weapon systems equipped with thermal imaging, night vision, electronic warfare capabilities, and satellite communication. The Magura V5 measures about 5.5 meters long, with a hydrodynamic hull that sits low in the water, making it extremely difficult to detect visually or on radar. It can travel up to 800 kilometers on a single mission, cruising at speeds around 40 knots, and carries between 200 and 320 kilograms of high explosives. The Sea Baby is larger and heavier, designed primarily for attacking stationary targets like docked ships. By October 2025, Ukraine unveiled an upgraded Sea Baby with artificial intelligence for targeting and navigation, extended range up to 1,500 kilometers, and payload capacity of 2,000 kilograms. These drones stream live high-definition video to operators who can be stationed anywhere with satellite internet. While Russian crews fire blindly into dark water at targets they can barely see, Ukrainian operators watch crystal-clear video feeds and adjust their approach in real time. Ukraine didn't just build individual drones. They developed swarm tactics that overwhelmed Russian defenses. As one Ukrainian military intelligence commander explained, they didn't try to destroy ships with single hits. Instead, they attacked in groups, delivering 5 or more strikes on large vessels to cause critical damage. The results speak for themselves. On February 1st, 2024, 6 Magura V-5 drones attacked and sank the Russian missile corvette Ivanovets in the Black Sea. Approximately 40 crew members were killed. Just 2 weeks later, Magura drones sunk the large landing ship Cesar Kunikov near Crimea. In March 2024, 5 Magura V-5 drones destroyed that $65 million patrol ship, Sergei Kotov, near the Kerch Strait. Ukraine had attempted to sink this vessel 3 times previously before finally succeeding. Each attack taught them more about Russian defenses and how to defeat them. Throughout 2023 and 2024, Ukrainian drones struck Russian vessels repeatedly. According to the UK Ministry of Defense, at least 26 Russian Navy vessels were damaged or destroyed in the Black Sea between February 2022 and June 2024. Other analyses suggest the number may exceed 30 vessels by late 2024 and into 2025. The impact on Russian naval operations was devastating. But the real strategic victory was breaking Russia's economic blockade. In September 2023, after Russia withdrew from the UN-brokered grain deal, Ukraine established its own maritime corridor along the western Black Sea coast. Ukrainian naval drones made this possible by putting every Russian ship at risk. The math was simple but brutal. A Russian warship costs tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to build and requires trained crews that take years to develop. A Ukrainian drone costs an estimated $250,000 and requires only a small team of operators. The economics were completely unsustainable for Russia. Every time they sent ships to patrol near Ukrainian waters, they risked losing vessels worth far more than the drones attacking them. So Russian ships retreated, and Ukraine's grain exports recovered. By autumn 2023, Ukraine exported 8.6 million tons of cargo. By the end of 2024, that number had reached nearly 100 million tons in total transshipment. By October 2025, approximately 90 million tons of grain alone had moved through the Ukrainian sea corridor to 55 countries worldwide. This wasn't just an economic victory. Every successful grain shipment funded more drone production, which enabled more attacks on Russian ships, which further secured the shipping lanes. Russia's blockade strategy had backfired completely. Then Ukraine rewrote the rulebook again. In December 2024, a Magura V-5 drone, armed with R-73 air-to-air missiles, shot down a Russian Mi-8 helicopter near Cape Tarkankut in Crimea. This was the first time in history that an unmanned naval platform had destroyed an aircraft. The missile used was a Vympel R-73, normally fired from MiG and Sukhoi fighter jets. By mounting jet launchers on boat drones, Ukraine could threaten Russian aircraft far from Ukrainian airspace, without deploying precious fighter jets needed for air defense elsewhere. But Ukraine didn't stop with helicopters. In May 2025, approximately 50 kilometers west of Novorossiysk, modified Magura V-7 naval drones reportedly shot down 2 Russian Su-30SM fighter jets using AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles. These are $50 million aircraft destroyed by drone boats. Ukrainian Defense Intelligence Chief Kirill Budanov confirmed at least 3 Magura V-7 drones participated in the attack. While the crew of the first jet successfully ejected and were recovered, the second crew was killed. This marked another historic first: jet fighters downed by maritime drones. The cumulative effect of these attacks forced Russia into a humiliating strategic retreat. Sevastopol has been the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet since imperial times. After annexing Crimea in 2014, Russia had returned it to its position as the center of Russian naval power in the region. But Ukraine's long-range drones put every ship and facility in Sevastopol at constant risk. Russian vessels began relocating to ports like Novorossiysk, Temryuk, and Taganrog, over 300 miles from the Ukrainian coast. Satellite imagery from Black Sky Intelligence Service showed ruined buildings and increasingly empty docks in Sevastopol. By spring 2024, the British Ministry of Defense declared the Russian Black Sea Fleet functionally inactive. Not damaged, not reduced, functionally inactive. Ukraine had made one of the world's largest naval forces strategically irrelevant without fielding a single traditional warship. This geographical displacement fundamentally degraded Russian capabilities. Ships operating from Novorossiysk instead of Sevastopol must travel much farther to reach operational areas. This increases fuel consumption, reduces patrol time near Ukrainian waters, and complicates logistical support. Ships spending more time in transit have less time for actual missions. Ukraine's capabilities extended even to attacking submarines in heavily defended Russian ports. On December 15, 2025, Ukraine used the Subsea Baby underwater drone to strike a Russian Kilo-class submarine at Novorossiysk Naval Base. Video footage released by Ukrainian intelligence showed the submarine alongside the pier, followed by a violent explosion at its position. While Russia denied significant damage, the strategic implications were clear. Even submarines supposedly safe in their home ports, deep inside Russian territory, were now vulnerable to Ukrainian attack. This matters because Russia's submarine fleet represents a crucial component of its naval power, particularly regarding NATO. Russia operates 8 Borei-class nuclear ballistic missile submarines, each carrying 16 nuclear missiles. 3 additional Yasin-class attack submarines provide tactical flexibility. However, these powerful assets have seen limited use in the Ukraine war. The reason is simple. Russia is fighting a nation with virtually no sea-based military assets. Ukraine has no destroyers to hunt, no carrier groups to threaten, no maritime supply convoys to interdict. Russia built a submarine force to counter NATO, not to support a land invasion of its neighbor. Beyond attacking ships, Ukraine has repeatedly targeted critical infrastructure connecting Crimea to Russia. The Kerch Bridge serves as a vital supply line for Russian forces in southern Ukraine. Built after Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea, it represents Putin's signature project to permanently bind the peninsula to Russia. Ukraine has conducted multiple major attacks on the bridge. These strikes force Russia into an impossible dilemma: defend every meter of this exposed structure, or rely on slower, riskier overland supply routes through occupied territory that remain under constant Ukrainian long-range attack. Without secure supply lines through Crimea, Russian forces operating in Kherson and Zaporizhia regions face exponentially greater logistical challenges. Every missile, every tank round, every meal for Russian troops becomes harder to deliver. This strategic squeeze explains why Ukraine continues targeting Crimean infrastructure, despite the attack's technical difficulty and international attention. The contrast between Ukrainian naval innovation and Russian naval decline couldn't be starker. In July 2025, Russian media reported that the country was considering scrapping its only aircraft carrier, the Admiral Kuznetsov. The Kuznetsov has been out of service since 2017, undergoing repairs that never seemed to finish. The ship suffered a catastrophic dry dock accident in 2018 that killed workers and damaged the vessel. A major fire in 2019 killed at least one worker and injured 14 others. Another fire occurred in 2022. According to Russian sources, repair and modernization work has now been suspended. The Russian Defense Ministry and United Shipbuilding Corporation are deciding whether to complete the repairs, mothball the ship, or scrap it entirely. Former Pacific Fleet Commander Admiral Sergei Avakians publicly stated that aircraft carriers are a thing of the past. Massive and costly structures, vulnerable to modern weapons. If Russia scraps the Kuznetsov, it will reduce Russia's carrier fleet to zero. This would leave Russia as the only major power aspiring to blue water naval capabilities without a single operational aircraft carrier. Meanwhile, China and India, both operating carriers derived from the same Soviet designs as the Kuznetsov, are actively expanding their fleets. Russia faces a fundamental problem that Ukraine exploited brilliantly: geographic fragmentation. Russia operates not one unified navy, but 4 separate major fleets: Black Sea, Baltic, Northern, and Pacific. Each fleet is isolated in its home waters, with no ability to reinforce the others during wartime. Turkey controls the straits connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean through the 1936 Montreux Convention. During wartime, Turkey can close these straits to outside warships. This means Russia cannot reinforce Black Sea losses with ships from other fleets. The Baltic Fleet faces similar constraints. Sweden and Finland's NATO membership means any attempt to deploy Baltic ships would face anti-ship missile batteries and ultra-silent Swedish submarines in narrow waters. The Northern Fleet focuses on Arctic operations and strategic deterrence. The Pacific Fleet is separated from European Russia by the entire Asian continent. This geographic reality means Russia's paper strength of 70-plus Black Sea Fleet vessels at the war's start represented the entirety of naval power they could bring to bear. Losses cannot be replaced from other fleets, only through new construction from shipyards that are failing to meet demand due to corruption, sanctions, and resource constraints. The lessons from Ukraine's naval campaign are being studied intensely by militaries worldwide. Traditional naval hierarchies are collapsing. Expensive warships designed to fight other warships have become vulnerable to swarms of cheap drones, costing a fraction of their price. Taiwan is watching these developments with particular interest. If China attempts an amphibious invasion, dozens of underwater and surface drones waiting off the coast could devastate assault forces. The tactics proven in the Black Sea could be adapted to defend against a naval invasion anywhere in the world. Western navies are reassessing their own vulnerabilities. How do you defend a billion-dollar destroyer against a swarm of 50 drones, each costing $250,000? Traditional naval weapon systems struggle to engage such small, fast, maneuverable targets, especially when they attack in coordinated groups. The age of the capital ship may not be over, but it has been fundamentally challenged. Naval warfare is becoming more about networked systems, artificial intelligence, and mass-produced unmanned platforms than about individual prestigious vessels. For Russia, the future looks bleak. The country's ground and air forces have been severely depleted in Ukraine. Naval modernization, which takes years and costs billions, barely registers on Moscow's priority list while fighting a grinding war of attrition. Russia's shipbuilding industry is struggling. According to analysis by the Jamestown Foundation, Russia's shipbuilding corporation recorded hundreds of millions of dollars in losses despite billions in reported revenues. Corruption siphons off procurement funds. Ships that should be operational sit in repair, lacking spare parts. Russia's most likely path forward may involve dependence on China. During the Cold War, Russia supplied China with fighters, submarines, and surface vessels. Now China's shipbuilding industry dwarfs Russia's, and Chinese naval technology has surpassed Russian designs in many categories. If Russia becomes dependent on Chinese ships, that dependence extends beyond hardware. China could leverage naval sales to extract concessions on energy prices, territorial disputes, and diplomatic support. The relationship grows increasingly asymmetric, with Russia as the junior partner dependent on Chinese goodwill. Ukraine's naval revolution demonstrates a profound truth about modern warfare. Innovation beats numbers, desperation breeds genius, and the future belongs to whoever adapts fastest. Ukrainian engineers working in garages under daily bombardment built drone boats from commercial components and off-the-shelf electronics. They proved you don't need a navy to win a naval war. You just need to be smarter than your enemy. Russia's Black Sea Fleet didn't just lose to Ukraine. It lost to the future of warfare itself. The tactics and technologies developed in this conflict will reshape how every maritime conflict is fought for decades to come. When this war eventually ends, military academies worldwide will teach Ukrainian naval tactics as a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. Subscribe to Sophie Hart Reports for more in-depth analysis on how this war continues to transform global geopolitics and military strategy. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on how navies need to adapt to this new drone-dominated era. And share this video with anyone who needs to understand how radically warfare is changing right before our eyes. The Black Sea today is a testing ground for tomorrow's battles, and the lessons being written in these waters will define naval warfare for generations to come.